Hey, great that you're listening to this podcast. In this podcast, Roefgesprekken, I will take you along with some stories from some sailors. So in every episode of this podcast, I will meet someone that's working in the fleet. We have a talk about what they experienced and what they are doing. And in this episode, I will meet Janke Kingma. She is currently the captain of Europa. Can you tell me, who are you? What keeps you busy?
My name is Janke Kingma. At the moment, since the last 8 years, I'm sailing on bark Europa, a big bark, 56 meters overall, and we're sailing basically from Norway, Canada, all the way down to Antarctica and Australia. So it's absolutely worldwide sailing. So that keeps me quite busy. When I'm gone for like 6 months a year, I think, roundabout. The goal is to only sail 5, but then we have shipyard times, and so all in all, I think I'm not at home for 6 months a year. Yeah, when I'm home, I have way too much stuff that keeps me busy. The house we're sitting in, it's a super nice house, but it needs some love and attention. I'm rebuilding it slowly. And next to that, I'm doing a lot of yoga, sports, and of course visiting friends and family when I'm home.
So based in Groningen and then go somewhere in this world.
Yeah, where my plane ticket brings me to. I'm already happy sometimes when I start in the Netherlands and I can take a train ride to not only to Schiphol, but actually to the ship and have less than 1 day of traveling. That's an amazing feeling.
The whole sailing part, you told me beforehand, didn't start like spontaneous. You were raised and born in a charter family.
Yeah. My father bought his flat-bottom ship when he was 24. He had a little tugboat next to it where he earned his money with, and slowly by doing jobs with the flat-bottom ship without any masts or without any cabins, he raised the money and slowly started rebuilding the ship himself. In the meantime, he met my mother. They got married, and they started to live in the picturesque small city of Schasterbrug, somewhere in the middle of Friesland. And they started out with surf and sailing camps where they took the people, and they had mattresses in the ship. And at night, the kids would come and stay on the ship it was basically the base camp of the sail and surf camps. And then in 1980, I was born. In the winter after, my father made his own rig. So he constructed his own mast out of a wooden tree. He just made it out of there, and also the booms and everything that's necessary. And then when I was a year old, they had their maiden trip. Pretty bad weather. They took me, and straight away, apparently I was super seasick, so I probably puked my gut out on the first trip. But they took me all the time, and then I got 2 brothers afterwards, twins, and 7 years later, a sister. And we've all been on board quite a bit. So we had a house in Stavoren. They moved somewhere along the line, and the ship was in the wintertime moored in the garden or in front of the house, so we could always watch it and maintain it, of course. Yeah, and in the summertime, my father would be gone, and in every holiday we would go, not entirely voluntarily, but once we were on board, it was okay. But we would join. Yeah, so I've been raised at least my whole primary school period on the ship, but we went to school in a normal way. And then I remember when I was 12, my father came home and said, "Yeah, I'm going to sell the ship," and we were like, "What?" I don't know if he had a midlife crisis, I don't know. And then he sold the ship, and he promised us to be home a bit more, and and figure out, I think, what he wanted to do. And so he did. And then one day, again, he came with a self-drawn picture of a brig, so a 2-mast square-rigged ship. And he said, this is going to be your new ship. And we were looking at it like, whoa, that looks really good. Okay. Yeah. And then he went to the bank and they lent him enough money. And he built the ship, of course, with the companies involved, but they built the ship from scratch and everything was new. And in the summer 94, we started sailing on it. And since that time, I think I was on board almost every weekend when possible, every summer holiday, every longer than 2 days holiday. Yeah. So it was like a decky starting out 14.
Nice.
Of course, I met a lot of people abroad, still people that are now very often still around in the sailing world. I remember Cosmo working on Atlantis. I was like, oh yeah, all those tall guys and older guys, and what are they doing? And those ships would go and sail in the Caribbean in the winter. So when I was 15 already, I decided like I'm going to do that no matter what. I'll figure out how to do it. So I finished my gymnasium when I was 17, and I organized by myself via certain ways. In the end, a one-way trip to the Caribbean, and I sailed on Sir Robert Baden-Powell, but they hired me as a stewardess. I don't know if that was the wisest option, and maybe it was a wise option, but I didn't really like it, the way of operating. So me sailing on that ship was not a success in the age I was on. So I quit after 3.5 months. But I stayed in the Caribbean, sailed on a day charter ship, like a yacht. And based St. Martin, and we did day trips with Americans. And sometimes we went to St. Bart's or did some stuff there. And then afterwards, I flew back home after 7-8 months abroad. And then I realized, okay, I'm going to sail again on the flat bottoms in the Netherlands. And I did the seaman school in Enkhuizen. 2 years straight after each other. So I finished in 2001. And then I also sailed my last year as a deckhand on a flat bottom 2-master in the Netherlands. And then I became a skipper on a 1-masted flat bottom ship with 21. I managed the sailing part really well. I managed the guest part really well. I managed the maintenance part really well, although I knew not so much about engines and stuff, but I asked people, I learned a lot. But the biggest thing was managing myself. I managed myself, but not in the correct way, or not in a self-sustainable way. So I fully blew myself up, and 1.5 years later, I had a massive burnout, the first one. So yeah, then I had to leave the ship, and I decided I never want to sail anymore. I never want to sail with guests anymore, and I never want to be involved in this world. I really didn't like it at that stage. So I decided to go and do that, what I also really liked, and I started to study history in Groningen on the university. Was totally a new world. People were talking about different things, and I met a various amount of different people. So, yeah, I did it for 3-4 years, full blown. But then I got restless because of probably all the sitting and the not being physically involved or physically busy. And I did some sport, but it was just not really enough. And then I got confused because, yeah, I was going to study and do something with that, but I couldn't see what. It got really problematic in the end, or I thought it was really problematic. Like, oh my God. Yeah, what about my future? I was really worrying about it until the moment I realized that maybe I shouldn't see it that black and white. So in the meantime, I started sailing again, and I went to Enkhuizen to get my commercial papers, like the handelsvaart I did there. And then I got offered a job on, for example, the Artemis to sail for a couple of months in the Mediterranean, and I got some other things. And then I became a captain on the Jacob Meinert in 2010. That was, and still that study was lingering on. So I had to tell my teachers or the professors there, like, oh yeah, no, I'll be back, but please, can I do it half year later? And la la la. They were not too pleased with me, maybe. But finally, after the season, the winter after Jacob Meinert, I decided I really need to finish this study. Also, the Dutch government started threatening with that fine that if you didn't finish your study in whatever amount of years, you had to pay, or you didn't get any money anymore. So I made a quick calculation, and getting my bachelor degree was 30,000 euros cheaper than not getting it, for example.
Motivation?
Yeah, it was quite a motivation. And I also, but I think the biggest motivation is that I really wanted to finish. So I did in 2011. But at the same time, I was already working in the Roop over Groen company. So in the ISM for sailing ship business, safety management stuff. Which, was also a new thing and offered me a whole new perspective on shipping. And I learned over there, although paperwork is quite boring, I totally agree, but I also learned that if you don't really like it, then try to make it work in your advantage at least. So the effort you put in, that it pays you back, instead of that it's that energy hole that you're only pumping in your energy and get nothing out of there. So I think that's the best lesson learned from those years. Also other offers came, like sailing. I did a bit on the Kairos in the Mediterranean, and I worked on Rembrandt van Rijn in Greenland, and sometimes I sailed on Stortemelk, and I sailed a lot throughout the years on the small 2-masted Zafir, which was a super lovely ship to sail on, and super nice areas. And I think the areas also got further and further away from the Netherlands. It's of course exciting. Oh, you can go to Greenland. Oh yeah, well, I'd never seen an iceberg in my life, but there were plenty. So yeah, all new experiences. And via that, I got involved with Oceanwide, a company that manages big passenger vessels. And since I had my commercial papers, they could use a third officer. And then all of a sudden found myself on a 90-meter long ship sailing to Antarctica. And, well, sailing, steaming on the engine. And the most funny thing was almost that the first trip I went on was a trip that we took Metallica, the band, took them to Antarctica for a silent concert.
Wow.
So yeah, that again was a whole new world. It was a bit crazy, and I was also like, whoa, okay, where did I land this time? It had its advantages. I learned shitloads. It had its disadvantages. I learned shitloads. Again, yeah, with crewing, working with different nationalities, working as a woman on those ships with nationalities where people are not always that female friendly, to put it in that way, I think. Yeah, and I also learned that walking around on a motorized vessel in a uniform in Antarctica can also be very boring. And then I met Harco. He was then captain on the Europa, and he told me about the Europa. I knew the Europa, of course, since whatever the ship existed. But I told him, yeah, no, that's not my kind of ship. No, that's not my thing. And he was like, yeah, I think it's exactly what you like. And then I quit with Oceanwide because I felt in everything that I learned a lot. It was a nice time, but hey, that was not my kind of thing. And then I talked with people from Europa, and they said, yeah, you can just come along. And I said, okay, I want to come along, but then as a deckhand, because that size ship I sailed on before, but never really thoroughly. And I wanted to just, know what it was about and how they dealt with everything. And so I started as a deckhand, and then shortly after, or the same trip already, I was officer. Then I became chief mate. Yeah, 1.5 years later, I became a captain when there was a spot. So that's what I've been doing since 2018. Sometimes have to pinch myself to keep on realizing that it's special. It is special. Like last summer, we visited Pitcairn, for example, and that's been, for many years I've been reading about it, and then all of a sudden you're there, you're at anchor, and then I knew, even the landing, it's quite hard to land, at least with your own zodiacs, because of the swell and the bad weather and stuff, or bad weather, but mainly windy, wavy conditions. And we were there, and we just took our zodiacs, and we just could go for 2 full days, and then walking around there and meeting I believe 46 people that are living on the island only. That was super special. And also then, sailing through the Pacific and seeing the Marquesas and Gambier and Tahiti, and also Easter Island when we started out. That was, for me, it was a big change of scenery and special. And Antarctica, where we of course go quite often, that is where I sometimes have to say, oh yeah, look around, look where you are, realize where you are. And what I really like is the colors. So yeah, it's basically, it's everywhere we go, I like it. Even also if it's a big ocean with every day a different color, or maybe every 2 weeks a different color, and a different sea state and different clouds, and the continuous change of where you go, and that's just never boring. That's what I really like. Yeah. In the sailing and the working itself, and what definitely is never boring is the people you're working with. It's of course the trainees we take, but it's also the crew. That is part that gives me a lot of energy, like working together in the big team we have, and with the very experienced people, the new people, and we have everything on board, like from 18 till I don't know what age, but I can imagine that the being away from home, that is sometimes what bothers me, or what I don't like. Very often before a trip, they say, oh yeah, are you ready for it? Are you looking forward to it? I'm like, no. You would say, some people say, oh no, it gets easier with the years. But the people I know, also on Europa, one of my officers, he also says, yeah, I've been doing it for well over 10 years, but it gets harder every time. So yeah, that's the double thing about it.
Sailing, you never do it alone on this kind of ships. You work with your guests, your crew, and everything have to work together. How do you take care of that? That's all working out.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And it's sometimes a question I ask myself, or I do ask myself that question on a regular basis. And I really think I had to learn it, because on the smaller ships, you're also sailing with trainees. And sometimes, like on the flat bottom ships, you take like 30 people on board maybe. But very often you only have 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 crew members. And on Europa, we're sailing with 15, 16, and sometimes in our Antarctic season, we're up to 18 crew members. And also in Europa, we have super many nationalities, like really from all over the world. In this matter, I really think a better world starts with yourself. Throughout the years that I've been sailing, I've seen a lot of different types of captains, and I came to realize that the captain and also the mate or the cook, they have such an influence on how the rest of the crew is dealing with stuff, how they are dealing with the emotional part, how they're dealing with themselves, and therefore then also dealing with the trainees that we take. So I came to realize also after not being too happy myself, because I had that period. So I told I had a burnout when I was 21. I had another one in 2020, a big one. I've been home for almost a year, and it was happy chosen because it was during COVID time. So the ship was laid up in the Netherlands, and I needed some time to reset myself and to also to figure out, also in the years after that, the method I chose to work with myself and with other people was not working anymore. I had to choose a different path. I always want to aim really high, and I still think I do that. But now from a more soft approach, a more friendly approach, like, yes, let's work our ass off. Let's work super hard. Let's sail this storm. Let's still do the same things, but be a bit friendlier about it. And if something doesn't work out like what I planned or what I wished, I could get mega frustrated, and I sometimes still can. But I learned to accept that it's if nothing goes really wrong, it's also okay. And I also learned to look around like, hey, oh, but they are still happy. Oh, the trainees are still happy. Oh, and the crew is also still happy. So, hey, I'm the only one being unhappy with this situation. Maybe I should have to stand outside and watch or look at that beautiful iceberg and then realize that, oh, it's actually quite good. And then I can let it go, like that unhappy feeling.
You're also yoga instructor. That's right, isn't it? Or it's not instructor? Do I say it wrong?
I did. I was in a school education of where I learned officially how to be a yoga teacher, but I never gave a lesson because I followed the education for myself. Also, when I applied, the teacher wanted to have a talk with me because he said, yeah, you're not there half of the year. So I want to know where I invest my energy in, and if if it's going to be kind of worth it. And then we chatted, and he was like, I told him also, no, I want to do some personal development here, because I think throughout the years I always did yoga, and I think it really helps me to calm down and to stop and be more in the moment and be more in my body instead of only thinking about everything in my head. And he laughed and he said I was in the right place. But then I told him, like, hey, but I don't really feel the necessity or the desire to become a yoga teacher. And then he had to laugh even harder. He said, then you're definitely in the right spot. So I could be a yoga teacher, but I choose to not do that because on the ship, I'm always telling people what to do, and I'm busy with that all the time. And then when I do yoga, it's really my own thing.
And can you do your yoga then when you're on board?
That's very hard. I try it every time again. But then, like, upcoming trip will be starting in Ushuaia, and we'll sail one day, then be in the Drake Passage. Yeah, and a downward facing dog or standing on one leg in the Drake Passage, this is impossible.
Now, you have seen the fleet for a little bit longer now. Like changes that you have seen that you noticed, like different than in the past?
There's many changes, and some are positive, some are less positive. I think a positive change, for example, is that the fleet, I think there's more awareness of professionalism, or I call it like more safety awareness, and it gets more normal to deal with that kind of stuff. And also what I think I notice, which is not per se a positive one, is impatience with the crew. I call it impatience. In the older days, or the earlier days, it wasn't all blue skies and green grass. I know, but what was more common is that you would stay, you would start out and you'd be a deckhand, and you would stay a deckhand for a couple of years, and then maybe you became a bosun somewhere, or you would do different kind of ships, and then people will become an officer or a mate or a skipper on a flat bottom boat, a smaller one maybe. But there would be a gradually build up of experience and knowledge and all of those kind of things. And I feel nowadays that people are in a hurry. You have crew members coming and they sail for 2 months and but I'm going to do the seaman school, and then I'll be an officer, and then I only need 1.5 years of sailing time, and then I'm a captain. And I'm like, whoa, okay, well, I hope you know what you're doing. And I notice with myself a lot of skepticism about that speed of learning the profession, because what we do is professional stuff, and we take people all over the world, and we take ourselves over the world. So I always reckon, like, I want to get home safe myself, and what do I need to do to make that happen? And yeah, I've been a deckhand for many years, and an officer for many years, and a skipper / captain for many years. But also while skippering or while captaining, sometimes to go back to an officer's position and learn other stuff on other ships. And that is a change that I sometimes think is not really positive. I would advise just young people, take the time, man. You're young. Yeah, and I know the payment is not so good, and yeah, there's many other things, but also, if you're a bit more patient, there's so much to learn from the old people. Yeah, well, I call them the old people, although I don't think I'm old, but I probably belong to the old people. But there's also much to learn from the young people and from your fellow colleagues. And yeah, and just take the time to go through that process. Don't rush it. Yeah, I don't think it's nice, but yeah.
Nice advice. Take your time.
Yeah, take the time, man. Just enjoy the fact that you're sailing somewhere and you're there in maybe not the most responsible position. It's also, yeah, it can be very enlightening, like very relaxed. And you sometimes don't realize it, how nice it can be that you have all the time in the world to figure something out, and that you're not pushed around by questions, and you have to keep people working all day and never get to your own stuff anymore, which is also captaining. So yeah, take your time. There's plenty of time to be the boss on some or another ship.
Yeah, thank you a lot for having the patience to answer all my questions.
Oh yeah, no, it was super nice.
Yeah, and it was really interesting to hear everything, to know more about your life, and have a little see through in what's happening.
Thank you.
For the next podcast, I will visit another captain and will ask them all about their experience. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to stay updated about all the episodes. And this podcast wouldn't be available with some help. So thanks to everyone that makes it possible to make this podcast.